speaking on many topics, including the very latest with Iran. And I did want to share more on that as you're taking a look at some video of some of the protests and the conflicts happening in Iran. This comes as Iran's supreme leader earlier today warned that any attack by the United States would spark a regional war in the Mideast, further escalating tensions as President Trump has threatened to militarily strike Iran over its crackdown on recent nationwide protests. The comments from Iran's supreme leader are the most direct threat that he has made so far as the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln and associated American warships are in the Arabian Sea, sent by Trump there after Tehran's bloody crackdown on nationwide protests. It does remain unclear whether President Trump will use force, but he has repeatedly said Iran wants to negotiate and has brought up Tehran's nuclear program as another issue that he wants to see resolved. And we were just hearing from him aboard Air Force One. He was asked by a reporter on whether he has decided on a strike against Iran. President Trump responding, "I certainly can't tell you that," before adding, "but we do have very big, powerful ships heading in that direction. I hope they negotiate something that is acceptable." President Trump did not directly answer when asked about whether Tehran would be emboldened if the U.S. opted not to launch strikes on Iran, saying, "Some people think that, some people don't." But he does say he believes Iran is negotiating seriously with the U.S., stressing that he hopes an acceptable deal can be brokered. He also said that the U.S. will not share military plans with Gulf allies while negotiating with Iran, even as U.S. naval forces surge into the region. Also today, the Speaker of Iran's parliament said the Islamic Republic now considers all European Union militaries to be terrorist groups after the bloc declared the country's paramilitary Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps a terror group over its crackdown on nationwide protests. This announcement by a former Revolutionary Guard commander comes as the Islamic Republic also planned live fire military drills for Sunday and Monday. And to speak more on this, I do want to bring in the Deputy Director, National Council of Resistance of Iran, U.S. Representative's Office, as well as a strategic policy consulting, the president for that group, and author of The Iran Threat, that is Ali Reza Jafarzadeh, who joins us right now on Live Now from Fox. And Ali Reza, we appreciate you joining us here live.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be on the show, Sony.
So I do want to start off with these negotiations that President Trump had referred to. And I wanted to ask you this, how you interpret President Trump's statement that Iran is negotiating seriously with the United States.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is the absolute desperation and weakness of the Iranian regime, because every time they come to the negotiating table, or at least they suggest that they want to be at the negotiating table, is after they have received major blows or been weak or desperate. I remember back in 2002 when our movement, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, which acts as the parliament in exile, we exposed the nuclear site in Natanz and Iraq in August of 2002. And in less than a year, we had a series of major press conferences exposing the entire picture of the nuclear weapons program of the Iran regime. Then the regime that was really under a lot of international pressure suggested that let's sit down and talk. They got the Europeans involved. They got the Americans, of course, Europeans who had taken the lead at the time. And they promised that we're going to abandon our nuclear weapons program. We're going to tell you the whole picture. And, you know, they started a game that is, you know, that obviously didn't go anywhere. But it started as a result of the weakness and vulnerability of the Iran regime. We have seen so many other cases similar to that. Now, speaking of the current situation, this is a regime that just killed thousands of the protesters who want to change. in the country. It engulfed nearly 400 cities in all 31 provinces of the country, people chanting death to the dictator, death to the Supreme Leader Khamenei, death to the oppressor, be the Shah, the Supreme Leader. This is not a situation that is favorable to the Ayatollahs. They were on the verge of collapse. And then before that, they had received so many blows in the region. They lost some of their biggest allies. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Assad, their biggest regional ally, was gone. So we're talking about a desperate regime. And that's why I think my suggestion to all the counterparts is that you see the weakness, try to capitalize on it, build up more and more pressure on the Iran regime. This is the time to hold the regime accountable and make them pay for what they have done.
And speaking of that, today, the Supreme Leader threatened that U.S. strikes on Iran would lead to a regional war. Do you see evidence that negotiations are producing concrete changes in Iran's behavior, or are they primarily tactical?
Well, obviously the regime has two choices. One is to really back down on end their terrorism, end their advanced nuclear weapons program, end their missile program, and most importantly, end the killing of their own population, which, based on the behavior and the nature of this regime, the chances for that are nearly zero. The other option is just to ratchet up and first of all, try to buy time and try to drag as far as they can, but there's not too much room left for them. And then, have a pose of, posing that they're going to confront. But they're no match for anything. This is a regime that's much weaker than it was a year ago or even a few weeks ago. So you will see a lot of hot air there, but I see a lot of desperation in the middle of the words of the Supreme Leader and other officials of the Iran regime.
And speaking of that, do you believe that the threat of military action strengthens or weaknesses diplomatic leverage with Tehran?
Well, one thing I know for the past, over 4 decades in dealing with the Ayatollahs ruling Iran, they only understand the language of decisiveness and firmness. Every time the world reached out to them trying to give them concessions, not only didn't change the behavior of the Iran regime, it further emboldened them. I just gave you the example of the nuclear negotiations back in 2002 when we first exposed the nuclear sites of Iran. There was a very genuine opportunity available for the world to end the nuclear weapons program of the Iran regime. Instead, they got into dealings, negotiations, giving them concessions, pallets of cash, and all kinds of concessions, none of which actually produce anything. That's why I think it's extremely important to understand that there's only one language that Tehran understands. And I think if they want to really ratchet up the pressure on the Iran regime for them to really understand what's happening, is that they need to count on the Iranian people, not the regime, because Iran is 93 million population. It's ruled by the very small group of clerics and the Revolutionary Guards who have the gun and the repressive forces. But the vast majority of the Iranian people are opposed to this regime. That's where you want to reach out. That's where you want to count. That's the future of Iran. So I would focus on that. I would be very specific, recognizing the right of the people of Iran to overthrow this regime, recognizing the right of those resistance units that belong to the main Iranian opposition, the MEK, that are confronting the Revolutionary Guards, saying they have the right to fight the Revolutionary Guards and end the rule of the clerics.
And we've been hearing that from President Trump as he was speaking to the Iranian people and the protesters, telling them not to give up and that he would support them. But looking ahead, he hasn't said publicly whether he is going to strike Iran. When it comes to what may happen in terms of that getting that end result, where do you think all of that stands?
Well, certainly the outside world has its own role to play, holding the regime accountable, don't give him concessions, don't give him money, don't give him legitimacy. But at the end of the day, if anyone is looking for a solution to the Iranian regime's threat, as they have been the head of the stake of war and terror for decades in the region and in the whole world, so that solution has to come from within, and that's regime change by the Iranian people. The good thing is that there is an organized force on the ground that has been fighting the Ayatollahs for over 4 decades. There is a capable leadership of the opposition against the Ayatollahs, headed by a woman, Mrs. Mariam Rajavi. She has introduced a 10-point platform for the future of Iran that makes it very clear that the future Iran is going to be contradictory, exactly the opposite of what the Ayatollahs are. You know, the legitimacy comes only from the ballot box. She has put forward the plan that is based on separation of religion and state, equal rights for men and women, freedom of religion, freedom of political parties, freedom of the press, and free market economy, peace in the Middle East, and a non-nuclear republic form of a government. That's the kind of Iran that respects the rights of all of the nationalities and minorities in Iran, has a very, great opportunity for the world to see Iran for what it is, a great nation, a proud nation with a tremendous history and culture and great ways to contribute to the world. Too bad the Ayatollahs have taken over. Now is the time to really look at that alternative. The prospect for that has never been so great. So I think the more pressure is built up on the Iran regime, the more space is created for those forces on the ground to bring about change.
And Ali Reza, before we let you go, you were saying that now there has never been a greater time for that potential for change. We have been seeing those protests continue to unfold, Iran's regime cracking down on the protesters. But in Iran right now, where is the momentum when it comes to that change?
Well, that's a great point. Even though there have been several rounds of major uprisings in Iran, at least since 2017, but each round of protests is different than the other one. The demand of the people gets deeper and deeper and gets to the core of the problem. It all started, with the increasing of the prices of chicken and eggs back in 2017. And then you had the price of gasoline being tripled in 2019 that triggered the uprising. 2022, it was the death of a Kurdish young woman, Mahsa Amini, because supposedly she didn't cover her hair properly and they killed her. But this time, it has gone so deep that the whole population in all provinces, in different sectors of the society, they're focused on regime change. They're focused on ending the rule of the clerics. So even though it may sound as though this is a cycle that is repeating itself, but in reality, it's getting deeper and deeper and getting closer and closer to the core. And that's why now the role of the organized force on the ground is so critical. We have had, like never before, we have had many cases that the young people, rebellious youth, confronting revolutionary guards, trying to disarm them, targeting the centers of repression. They're not just standing there receiving bullets and getting killed. They're thinking and organizing about confronting the regime, seeing how they can actually end the rule of the clerics, tilt the balance of power against the regime and in favor of the youth. And when you have a nation so determined that is willing to get into the streets, men and women, young and old, and confront the revolutionary guards, that's a big problem for the Ayatollahs and great prospect for change, despite all of the losses and lives being lost. But these are people who have fallen for freedom, who have sacrificed for the nation. And that's why I feel that we are getting very, very close to the final battle to end the rule of the clerics.
Ali Reza, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.